Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. On February 24, 2004, a friend requested me to drive her to look for an apartment for her and her children. I was experiencing cold symptoms such as fever, cold sweats, impaired vision, and so on. I recall having difficulty concentrating my eyes while driving. My vision was becoming distorted and blurry. My wife had known about my condition for several days and had been urging me to see a doctor, but I refused. Without my knowledge, she called the doctor's office and scheduled me for 2 p.m. that same day. I agreed to go to the doctor so that my wife would stop bothering me. I accompanied a friend to the doctor's office, and we promised to resume our apartment search following my doctor's appointment. We got at the doctor's office around 1:40 p.m. I was suffering eyesight issues and only needed to travel a few miles. When I arrived at the office, I asked for a drink of water. I requested additional water after the receptionist brought me a 2 or 3 ounce disposable cup of water. I told her I needed a lot more. She returned a few minutes later with more water and the doctor. "Get him inside right now," the doctor said. I was immediately led to an examining room. I recall having a normal interaction with the helper. She was asking how the family was doing and engaging in a normal brief discussion. I took a seat on the examining table. The blood pressure monitor was strapped to my left arm by the nurse. As the nurse pumped the monitor, I began to feel as though I was drifting away and losing consciousness. While barely aware, I felt my body tumble backward. I couldn't keep my body under control. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear everything that was going on around me. "Hurry! Get a doctor here! Hurry! He's dead!" yelled the nurse. I could hear the room filling up and everyone talking at the same time. My wife, who had just entered the room, was also present. My doctor called an ambulance as another doctor was pounding on my chest. I couldn't feel anything, but my hearing was excellent. There was insanity all around me. I began to regain awareness once more. The doctor took my hand in his and told me what had happened and that an ambulance was on its way. I recall seeing all the doctors in that office in the same room as me. My wife was present as well. Because the hospital was only 3 miles away, the ambulance arrived quickly. I was ready and moved when the ambulance arrived. My wife drove our friend home, and we later met at the hospital. There were several people waiting for me when we arrived at the hospital. I needed to use the restroom and wanted to get up, but they wouldn't let me. The emergency room's medical director was present. "You have no clue how sick you are, my friend," he added as he took my hand in his. I never got back up. The medical director informed me that I was extremely ill and would be placed in an induced coma. My wife gave her approval. The travel to the other side is as follows. I recall everything going dark while I was in the emergency room chatting to my wife and the doctor. Suddenly, there was a corridor with large double French doors at the end. I was making my way towards the open doors. I couldn't see my body, but I did see this lovely white, dazzling light all over me. A force kept me back as I reached the doors. It wasn't a literal hand or anything, but it was a force. I was immediately interrupted by a voice saying, "You cannot enter that room, my son." The communication was telepathic rather than physical. I realized I was in a strange place and had died. I was quite comfortable and had a terrific sense of tranquility. There was no discomfort or concern. I was filled with joy and love surrounding me. I peeked inside as I stepped on the threshold of that lovely door and saw a large theater-style auditorium packed with red chairs. I noticed the entrance to a cave on one side of the chamber, with an American Indian seated in front of it. He was facing a campfire, and on the other side of it sat a tiger, its front paws crossed. There were no walls, only infinity. The Indian and the tiger had no idea I was there. That sight was breathtaking, with colors I'd never seen before or since. I tried to enter the room again once I finished looking around. "I just told you, my son. You cannot enter that chamber," said the speaker again. "Why can't I go inside?" I inquired. "You must return," the voice said. "You must complete one more task." "What is that?" I inquired. The voice then said, "You have one more thing to do in your life. When the time comes, you'll know. But you must return and complete that one more task." Suddenly, I felt intense pain across my entire body. I was in a hospital bed in a hospital room. My wife was sleeping close to the bed. My wife awoke as I moved. "They told me to come back to perform one more thing," I stated to her. My wife claims that I closed my eyes again and went to sleep. The next morning, I awoke in anguish and discomfort. However, I was able to tell my wife about all that had happened to me. I immediately noticed angels entering and exiting my chamber. I vividly recall seeing the cave with the Indian, the fire, and the tiger. I was in a dimension where I could see both places at the same time. My legs and arms were paralyzed, and my entire body was paralyzed. As time passed, the angels continued to visit me on a daily basis. My first meal finally arrived. It consisted of beef soup with veggies. They placed the meal on a platter in front of me, but I was unable to move my arms to consume it. Then an elderly lady entered the room and began mopping the floor. I informed the lady I was hungry and couldn't move my arms. I asked if she could be so kind to assist me with the meal because I was starving. "Let me wash my hands and I'll help you," she offered. She returned, sat on the bed, and fed me until the bowl was empty before leaving the room. A nurse arrived in the room around 15 minutes later to assist me with the food. "Oh, Mr. R, can you move your arms? You ate everything," she exclaimed, looking at the bowl. "The lady who cleans the floors assisted me with the food," I explained. "There is no old lady who cleans the floors here," the nurse responded, as if I were from another planet. "No one cleans the floors until they're permitted in." I knew then that I'd been visited by an angel once more. As time passed, I was transferred to various departments of the hospital until I was released to go home. Even at home, I was visited by angels. The angels wanted to play all the time when I was home. They run around and play like young kids. I could see a few minutes into the future before it faded away with the angels. I couldn't see the angels after a while. They were present, but I couldn't see them. This is how we are born. We see the angels, then they vanish. Angels surround us. We just don't notice them. As time passed, I began to relearn how to walk, drive, use the restroom, and so on. When I was strong enough, I developed a strong urge to work with wood. I purchased tools and made some lovely pieces of furniture. I felt strange, as if I were another person. I wasn't the same person I used to be. I'll spend the next few years working with wood around the house, feeling different, not feeling like the same person. I was thinking about the one more thing I meant to do, but I couldn't come up with anything, so I forced myself to stop thinking about it. I gradually forgot about it. I eventually retired and relocated to another state. I kept working with wood around the house, doing what I could. My 28-year-old daughter contacted me one day to tell me she was pregnant. Everyone was overjoyed because it was our first grandson. Time passed, and my daughter married the child's father, a bad drug user. My daughter gradually began to display indicators of drug use after the birth of my grandchild. At the time, my grandson was 2 years old. My daughter said that she abandoned my grandson somewhere and everywhere. My ex-wife's mother was making people's life unpleasant by demanding money to care for my grandchild. My grandson would spend weeks with me, then with my ex-wife, then with my daughter, and it was a jumbled mess. I hired a lawyer and attempted to take my grandson away from my daughter, but it failed. Soon after, my ex-wife made so many calls to Child Protective Services that the state removed the child and placed him in a foster care. I attempted to get him out, but the state wouldn't let me have him because I was suffering from lung cancer at the time. I underwent surgery and recovered. Then they handed over custody of my grandson to me. Every other month for 3 years, I fought my wicked ex-wife in court as hard as I could. Meanwhile, when the youngster was with me, I took excellent care of him at all times. The legal fights came to an end on July 27, 2017, when my wife and I became the proud parents of our 9-year-old grandson. It took me 7 years of legal battles against my daughter and her mother, but the court saw the wickedness in them directed at me and my grandson. My grandson, wife, and I are now quite happy. Today, I'm wondering if my one thing has been completed, or if I still have more to do. Nothing but time will tell.